everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on workflows for site design in RoadEng and terrain tools. For those of you here in the live version of the webinar, please ask questions and engage with us through the Q&A section of the GoToWebinar panel. We'll address all your questions at the end of the webinar. Okay, so for this webinar, we're focused on foundational concepts and workflows needed for site design, which includes merging terrains, adding reference background terrains, calculating volumes between terrains, grading, and more. Before I pass it over to our presenter, Dave, I just wanted to go through a typical workflow for most types of site design. We start with our original ground in our first terrain file. In a new terrain file, we create our new manufactured surface that references our original ground. This could be a pad, pit, pond, or other site designs. With these two elements in their own terrains, we calculate volumes for new surface. We do it now for more accurate volumes because you have a defined boundary of disturbance. And now we create our third terrain file, and in that, create a merged surface from our new ground and our original ground to make a new surface. We can repeat as needed to achieve our design goals, site design goals. Okay, now let's see some concepts in action.
Thanks so much, Andy. Let's look at my screen. Okay, Andy, can you see my screen okay? We're just looking at terrain.
Yes, yes, we can.
Good, okay. Let's get started. So I'm going to open an original ground terrain. And I'm going to use this bluff road terrain here, which is a fairly good survey of a quarry. We've got some break lines in there, lots of points, and it shows the ground at a certain time when the survey was taken. Now, let's say I wanted to calculate a volume of a pile. If I have surveyed before the pile and after the pile, then I can subtract two surfaces. But RoadEng actually allows you, the terrain module, you don't need the full RoadEng program, just the terrain module, allows you to calculate the volume of a pile just by drawing a circle around it. It's not the perfect, accurate calculation, but it's a really good approximation. So you can see here on the edge of the flat part of our quarry, we've got two piles of stuff, and I've taken the trouble to draw a circle around them. These circles are draped, so they have the elevation turned off, model turned on, so they're picking up the elevation of the ground, which is basically the platform outside of the pile. If I turn the properties of these things into surface/volume boundary, don't forget to click apply, then I can calculate the volume here using a single surface. Let's do that. Terrain modeling, calculate volume. I've only got one surface, so I don't need to define the base. I'm going to use polygons, surface volume boundary polygons, and I click OK here, and it finds for me the volume of my two piles. I'm not sure which one is which, and let's see here, the current one is pile bottom 0, so that's the big one, and sure enough, this has more fill than the small one. Notice there's a tiny bit of cut volume here. That's really just an issue of accuracy. What the software is doing is it's creating a surface using this boundary. It's roughly flat, and then it's subtracting that artificial surface from the main surface to give me a volume, and it's pretty accurate. especially if the outside of the pile is flat and the original surface was flat before you put your dirt on it. Now let's look at another situation. Again, fairly simple. What if I wanted to build a pile and I wanted to know how much material was in that pile and how far it would spread? So let's do that. I'm going to use our grading tool, and I'm going to use that as step 2 in the process of building a site where I'm generating or manufacturing a surface. When you use the grading tool, you almost always start with a brand new surface. So let's do that. Or a brand new terrain, I should say. We've got an empty terrain here, and I am going to, first of all, display in the background my original ground. Just zoom extent so we can see it. There it is. So there's the original ground. Now this is in the background of the plan window of the design in general. So I can't select features. I can hover and see the elevation. I can even hover and see the name of the feature I'm hovering over, but I can't actually do much with this because it's a background terrain. Now I'm going to build a graded pile. So here's how I'm going to do it, and there's lots of different ways to make surfaces. I could start drawing 3D points, but I'm going to use our grading tool. So I'm going to draw the top of the pile. Oh, before I start, what elevation is my bench here? It's 1253. I'm going to make a pile that's 7 meters high, so I'm going to put the top of the pile at 1260. So I'm going to draw a 3D feature. Let's call it pile top. And whoops. And let's draw it with the mouse. And let's set the elevation at 1260. That's going to be the top of my pile. Now, it turns out that for grading, it's better to have a polygon than a line. So I'm just going to buffer that out and make it into a tiny polygon. I could change its shape too. That would be kind of fun, like so. Anyway, I'm not going to do that. Okay, so we have a grading operation here, and if I buffer this a small amount, let's say 1/2 meter on both sides, I get this shape. And I'll just join those two together to make a polygon. And now I don't need this feature in the center anymore. I can delete that. I could leave it there, but I'm just going to delete it. So there's my pile top. It's one feature, and I'm going to grade it out. Terrain modeling, grading options. What am I grading to? In this case, I'm grading to a surface. It's on the list because it's already in the background, but I could browse for it if I wanted to. And grading to the left, I always forget to check. It'll probably work. If I was wrong, we'll change it over to the right. This is all going to be fill, so it's the fill angle that's important, minus slope. But if I did cut anything, it would cut at 100%. Okay, I'm going to add some extra points along here. And the grading operation, the first time you run it, you need to set it up, and you always want the boundary to be a surface boundary, tin boundary. If you want volumes, you need to calculate a surface. When you're calculating the surface, you probably don't care about contours. It's very important to click include all because this boundary that we just turned on here is going to contain the surface, and we don't want to miss any triangles by limiting the length. So we're going to include all. Okay. Looks good. Let's calculate volumes at the same time. Press OK. And oh, I had a checkbox turned on from my previous operation, so I'm getting the wrong calculation here. I'll fix that in a sec. Let's just do that here. Calculate volumes. Do not include surface by volume. Do include original ground volume between two surfaces. So now we've got a very accurate volume because we've got an original ground surface and we've got our graded surface in the foreground, and we're subtracting between those two to calculate volumes. This is all set up correctly now. No more warning message, and it's showing me my pile is 4042 cubic meters. If I wanted to make that a larger volume or a smaller volume, I could just change the top of the pile, either its length or its height, and redo it. So let's do that quickly. Let's say I want to make this pile a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to select. I don't actually have to change the selection state. The elevation of the top of the pile, remember, is 1260, and that is the current feature. You can tell down here, pile top, and you can see the little red cross there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's there. So I'm going to use this thing, Feature Tools Shift. I could use Transform too, that would work, but I kind of like Shift better. And it's, where the heck has Shift gone? There it is. Change that from 1260 to, let's go up a meter. This should increase our volume. Now I've lifted the whole thing up. In fact, you could see that in the 3D window if you looked. It's now kind of floating a meter above the ground. And what about all these other features, these slope line features and the toe feature? They're all at the wrong elevation. But the good news is when you do a grading operation, first of all, it remembers what you set up before, and it automatically deletes the old features and creates new ones. So there you can see it's bigger, and my volume is bigger. I'm done. Okay, now I'm going to save that. This surface is, well, these features that are all in the background, all these contours and so on. This surface is my terrain right now. That's all it is. So let's save that. I'll call it Pile. I've already done this, so I'm just going to save over top of it. And now I have two surfaces. What if I wanted to see the final results? Well, I can merge them, or I can just look at them independently. Even now, with the pile in the foreground and the surface in the background, I can just look in the 3D window, and there it is. Because the pile is on top of the surface, it actually doesn't matter if I make the original ground opaque, like so. There we go. And if I wanted to, I could create a cross section and see what this looks like with the pieces separate. I'm not going to bother to merge these right now. I'm going to go on to a completely different example and show you how you can create a pit. Instead of using the grading tool, I'm going to use a slightly different technique. So let's this is fine. I'm happy with this. Let's just save it in case I want to come back to it. No, do I want to save this? We'll do a save as. That's what I'll do. And I can choose. This is the pile, isn't it? Yeah. No, I can save this. I'll come back to it later. Okay. Now, let's open another original ground file. I was working in version 10. That's why we got that little warning, just to make sure everything still works in version 10. We'll be releasing that, not for a while yet. It'll be out in beta soon, but it's always good to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to. Okay, here's my original ground. Now I'd like to make a quarry or a open pit excavation with benches. I could do that with a grading operation. Hard to put the benches in. Maybe I'll just do that Do I have time? I don't think I have time. I'm going to do this a completely different way. So again, I'm going to start from a brand new terrain, and I'll put this one in the background. And in the right folder, there's my background terrain. Okay. Zoom extents, there it is. Now I'm going to make a pit. Let's see, we're at elevation 721 here on the surface. I'm going to make the bottom of my pit at 700. So I'm going to, again, just draw a feature. It's a 3D feature. It's going to make a surface. Draw it with the mouse, elevation 700. And I'll draw some sort of shape here. Let's close that to make it into a polygon. And now to generate the benches and the walls of my pit, I'm just going to use the buffer function. So I'm going to buffer to the left because I drew this thing clockwise, so left is outwards, so buffer left. First thing I'm going to do is go up 10 meters. How do I do that? Well, if I go at 200%, 5 meters along will be 10 meters up. That looks good. Okay. And you can see the elevation of this is now at 710. That's good. Just change its name. Don't forget apply and buffer it again. Let's make a bench. So a bench would be at 0 grade and maybe 5 meters wide. No, let's make it 3 meters wide. Do that. I'm going to do this 2 more times to build something that goes well above the original ground. There's my cut wall number 2. And we're now up at elevation 720. Good. One more bench. And finally, one more cut wall, then I'm done. Now this is actually, it's not a surface yet, it's just a bunch of 3D features. It will make a nice surface if I calculate it now. It's a nice convex shape. If it wasn't a convex shape, then it would be important to make the final line here into a tin boundary. And let's just make that into a surface. I'm not going to bother with contours. And I want to include all features because I've got my tin boundary, all triangles I mean. Looks good. So there it is. Now I don't have the original ground surface turned on, but if you kind of look at it carefully while you're rotating, you'll see that my pit is sticking up above the surface. I'm going to calculate the volume between the designed pit and the original ground. And again, we have an original ground surface, so we can use volume between 2 surfaces. Here's something I haven't shown you before. Calculate features. What this will do is calculate a surface intersection. And you can choose the line type and color. It's going to be green dash. Okay, surface intersection between the pit and the original ground. That will be very useful. So we have a volume. Let's see, this is our original, that's our final. We haven't named it yet. And you can see that it's mostly cut, but there's a bit of fill on the edges where it sticks up above the original ground. That's completely unrealistic. there's that green dashed line. You can see it here. There it is. It goes around the pit where it intersects the ground. So if I use that line to trim off the outside, I've created a, well, let's do it. Let's see what it looks like. So let's change that line into pit top, make it a modeled feature, make it a tin boundary, and now I can also use it to break anything that crosses it, because some of the original features cross over it. So I want to use it to break them. So let's do that. Break it, current feature, include all. Okay. And finally, let's get rid of anything that's outside of it. So select by boundary outside. Okay. And now these little pieces that were cut off are selected, and I can delete them with the delete key. Right. Let's recalculate this pit and watch what happens in the 3D window. Oops, I've got some issues. I would like to see a nice smooth surface, but I'm getting all these weird triangles. I should have made all of these into break lines. Let's just do that quickly. The edges of benches, bottom of cut, top of fill, top of cut, all those things are natural break lines. And now I'll just redo that one more time. That's better. Okay, there we go. So again, I started with a surface which is in the background, and I used it as a tool to create a new surface, a manufactured surface. And this manufactured surface looks like a pit with benches. Some places I got 2 benches in, some places I only got 1 bench in. And now let's go through the next step and create the merged. Oh, and of course I got a good volume. I don't know if you noticed, but well, I haven't calculated the volume. Let's do that again. Recalculate. Now that I have a pit that's truncated at the original ground, there's no fill. It's all cut. So I'd like to make a new surface that represents the finished product. So let's save this. This time I'm not going to save on top of my existing one because I've incorporated it into some other things. So there, I've saved the pit surface. Now let's reopen the original ground. Oops, missed. Reopen the original ground. Okay, and before I forget, save as. Don't want to mess up my original ground. I need it for other purposes, but now I've saved as a different name, and I can do the merge operation. Merge. Let's pick the pit that we just created, this one, and do the merge operation. That's interesting. Did I do something funny here? I maybe didn't recalculate the 10. Yeah. There's my pit. No, it's up to date. Let's recalculate anyway and save. Okay. Back to the original ground surface. Oops, I saved it. Shouldn't have. Okay. Original ground. Save as. Now merge operation. Okay. Note there's an option here to just create a hole instead of actually doing a merge. That can be very useful. Cutting out a shape from your surface. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to go back to my original because there's something wrong with this and we will look into it. Let's go back to the pit that I created before I started this webinar. So I created this pit here, and I trimmed it to make that one. So there's another example of the pit. Okay, and I'm just going to open. Oopsie. And do the merge operation again. This time it's going to work, right? So I'll use this pit here. So there's something unusual about the pit I just created, and I will look into why it doesn't work, but this one does because I've tried it already. So here we go. Take the defaults, merge. Now there's one more step you've got to do after a merge, and that is recalculate the surface. So I'll do that. I don't need to change anything. Oh, I do. I'm going to turn off the contours. I don't want any contours. And I want to include all triangles too. That's important. There we go. So now I've created a surface that is the combined model representing the original ground outside and the pit inside. It's one surface, one terrain. And I can save that now. It's already been renamed. And that's the little diagram that was shown at the beginning of the webinar in the PowerPoint. So we've gone through the steps of creating the original ground somehow, creating the manufactured surface. It's saved as a separate surface so we can use it for other things. And now, and I measured the volumes between the two, and now I can see the final product here. And you can keep doing that. So now that I've got an original ground surface here, which include, well, it's a composite surface, a merged surface that includes the pit, I can now do other things like design a road or design a ramp or whatever makes sense. I did prepare a little roadway surface using our location module. I'm not going to go through that, but let's merge it in and see what it looks like. So File, Save As, OG plus pit plus road. First of all, I can calculate the volume between the two surfaces. Let's put it in the background. I don't have to put it in the background, but it's nice to see it. So here's my pit road surface. And for those of you who use the location module, this is exported from our road design package, the location module, to our terrain format. Okay. And there it is. You can see it in the plan window, and you can see it in here too. Let's change some options so we can see it better. So there's the road, and I want to display it. And yeah, gray's a good color. How about red? Let's make it a real bright red color. Okay. Okay. And you can only see a few pieces of it because it's actually under the ground here. And the ground is current and it's opaque. So I'm not too happy about how hard this is to figure out. Alpha channel means transparency, and if it's less than 255, it's partially transparent. 0 would be invisible. Right, so I changed the color of the ground surface, and there you can see it. You can see the road underneath because you can see through the merged surface. And I can calculate a volume. So if I had the pit already and I wanted to calculate how much volume I needed to cut and fill to make the road, I can subtract these two surfaces and generate a volume. So there we are. It's mostly cut. There's a little bit of fill. It's that much volume. And I can merge it. So let's do the merge operation. I've already saved it as original ground plus pit plus road. Let's do that merge operation. We want to merge pit road into the current surface. There it is. So when you do a merge operation, it chops a hole in the original ground surface or the current surface, whatever it is. So there you can see that's the top of the pit has been chopped out, and it replaces it with the other surface. It also puts in a couple of little lines. You can see there's a little gap there. We call those the hull lines. They are used to make sure that you get a reasonable transition between old and new surfaces, and then you can rebuild the tin model. There we go. And I don't need to see the background anymore because it's still there. So let's remove that. Not because it's still there. Let's remove this altogether. So don't display, don't display. Okay. And there it is. There's my merged surface. Now, if I wanted to, I could calculate the volume between this merged surface and the original ground. However, it would calculate the volume everywhere. Hopefully there would be 0 volume outside of my disturbed area, but it wouldn't be all that accurate. So I might want to put a boundary around here, and you can always do that. You can always draw a boundary and make it into a surface volume boundary, and then that would limit your volumes. But let's do that volume calculation, see if that makes sense. So volumes between this and, well, it's not in the background, so I'm going to have to browse for it. Original ground with no modifications. Takes longer because it's calculating volume all the way out to the edge here, and most of it's coming up 0, I hope. But it will come up with an answer in a second. There we go. And it's showing mostly fill. That's because these original final things aren't correct. There we go. It's mostly cut. There is a tiny bit of fill that may be inaccuracy because of all the subtraction it had to do out here, or there may actually be a little bit of fill up here. I'm not sure. Can't remember how that road looked when I created it. There we go. Well, that basically covers the concepts I wanted to show. I was going to show you the operation of grading a ramp into here, but rather than doing that, I think I'll just open it and show it to you. So you saw how I graded a pit. Well, you can also grade cuts, and here's the final product. And I've already saved this, so I'm not going to save it again. Oh, actually, it's got a name, doesn't it? Let's save it. And then let's open ramp. This is another way to get into the pit. I was careful to draw this feature, that's the center line, at the right grade and terminate on the ground and terminate at the bottom of the pit. And then I buffered it to make road edges. And then I selected those things and did a grading operation and created this surface. So it looks like so. So again, this would be a third manufactured surface. The first surface was the original ground. The second was the pit. And then this is a third surface that I've created. It's good to keep all your files because here's original ground, here's pit, and here's ramp. Where's ramp? When you've got all of those original files available, you can display them all and look at cross sections and so on. So let's take a look at this file here. Am I in file open? I can't remember. No. Okay, output. You know, I could create this quite easily while you watch. I think that's a good idea. Let's open the original ground file. Nothing there. Now let's add some backgrounds. I'm going to look at the pit and the ramp. So even though the ramp was created from a merged surface, I don't need to look at the merged surface now. I can just display these two in the background. Now, each of these has properties. I can change their colors and line types and so on. But for now, let's just look at them. So there they are in the background, and my 3D window will show them as well. There they are. Now, to get them all visible, I need to change their transparency because they're all underneath the ground. Actually, all I need to do really is change the current transparency. There's another different way to do this. I might have a chance to show that in a second with cutting holes in the model. But if you want to see cross sections, you need all the surfaces. Great, so I've made the current transparent, and the pit I'm going to display as gray. That looks good. And the ramp I'm going to display as bright red. Okay, there we go. And so now you can see them all in the 3D view. So again, to reiterate, if you keep all the little bits and pieces before you do your merge operation, you can use them to A, calculate volumes, B, display in your 3D and your plan, and C, make cross sections. So if I create a new feature here called a section, which is draped, and draw it, now let's look at it. There's the profile window button, click on there, and there's my cross section. And let's just move it over here so I can see it a bit better. So you can see that it is showing the original ground, the pit, and the ramp all together in one cross section. Automatically, you don't have to draw anything special. You can change colors and line types and so on, as I mentioned. So background, profile window options, background. The pit is now black. That's okay. Let's change the ramp to red, properties, profile format. So you can change the colors of the features in the profile. Now that one's red. Notice how the cursor's moving around in all my windows here. That's really useful for finding things. And finally, I'm just going to change the color for the profile feature here. I'm not going to change the color. I'm going to change the line type. I'm only changing the profile line type. Notice it says also set plan here. So I'm not going to set the plan line type, just the profile. Okay, and there we go. So there's my ground, there's my pit, there's my road, and everything is up to date. If I move my cross-section around, whoops, if I move my cross-section around, you can see that cross-section changing dynamically. Oops. Right, so I've finished with the main part of the demo. Let's now go to questions. I have a question. Can I display a cut fill map? So first of all, if you don't know what a cut fill map is, and the answer is yes, but I'm going to show you an example. A cut fill map is actually the measurement of depth of cut shown in a colorful way, so you can see what's going on. Now this example, everything would be cut and it wouldn't be that interesting. Let me open another example here. Okay, pad design with terrain. Where is that? This one has two things that are really nice. It's got an output window. Using our multiplot. Now I got to change the paper size. Oh, that didn't help. There it is. Right, so here's our terrain multiplot. We're not talking about that during this webinar. There are other webinars that explain how to set these things up. But basically, we've got multiple cross sections here, and we've got a plan view which is showing in the background a cut fill map. So the green area, geez, is that cut or fill? I don't know. Green is let's assume that that's cut, and then the red is fill, and the color intensity tells you how deep. Yes, we can create those. It uses some fairly advanced tools. Essentially what you do is you use our save as regular grid option. Let's just call this, yeah. And you subtract two surfaces. So you have to have two surfaces and you subtract them. And here's surface number 1, and you can browse for surface number 2. And so you create a surface that represents the difference between two other surfaces, and then you use the shading option to make it look like that. Another question I have, is it possible to display the design surface in different colors? Well, we were there, right? It wasn't too bad where we were before. Oh, I didn't open the one that has everything set up. Let's just go there. Okay, so back to here. Oops. Yeah. So this might answer your question, but what if you wanted to not have transparency and just have everything really bold and clear? Well, the way you do that, and I'm just going to do it with the merged pit and the road. So I'm going to open up the merged surface which has pit and ground. And then I want to see the road surface in here. Here's how I'm going to do it. Instead of just displaying the road in the background the way it is, that's important. So let's do that. I do need to put the road in there. So let's add pit road. Okay. But I can't see it in here very well, because it's underneath. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to cut a hole in the terrain using our merge function. So I mentioned this earlier. When you merge a surface, you have to have a surface. It can't just be a terrain file. It has to have a surface in it. And it has to have a well-defined boundary. You have an option to create a hole. Instead of merging all the data, just leave a hole. And then let's recalculate. And there we go. So now we've got the, if I turned off my background here, this would just be a hole. And my surface would just be a hole. If I turn off my background, you can see it's a hole. I'll do that right here. Let's get rid of the pit road. Don't display it. And you can see it's just a hole in the model. So I could have multiple surfaces poking through these holes and use different colors for each of them using our 3D options. I think that answers that question. Any further questions about the workflow for creating a site plan? Well, thank you all for your patience. And just to, well, this video is going to be up on our YouTube, so you can watch it and watch that PowerPoint at the beginning. You can build surfaces various different ways. You can use our location module. You can use our grading tool. You can just draw features and make them into a surface. And then you can use these terrain modeling tools like Merge to build composite surfaces. And finally, you can display all these surfaces using backgrounds and display cross-sections and even put it all in a multiplot if you like. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, everyone. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to email us. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for watching another Softree webinar. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel below or tell us that you liked the video. Thanks for watching.